I know. I get it. I get it.
Good morning, everybody. We're gonna have some fun this morning, and I'm so excited to have Kara here. We were actually so absorbed in our little pre-chat, getting everything ready, that we realized we should probably tune in live. And I want to just say welcome to 2021. How do you like the trial subscription so far, everyone? I think you've seen that meme going around, but it's going to be a great year. The energies this year are so incredible. And actually, we will, I know many of you watching right now it may feel a little turbulent right now, but I'm telling you, there's just light at the end of this tunnel, and there's such great things happening. And that's what we're going to focus on this show today. And this is Kara Goldin from Marin County. She's joining us today. Kara, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so great to see you here. So I want to first give a quick plug for Kara's book. Your publisher will be happy that I'm doing this, right? Hello. This is Undaunted. It is awesome. I got a copy for every one of my members of the trust. We sent it to them as an end of year gift to get them powered up for 2021. We're going to talk about today. And I want you to know that I'm also, of course, sipping Hint this morning. And so I'm like your ultimate poster child.
Yay.
So I just need to spray on the sunscreen and then we're ready. Yeah. Yeah. So this is We Lead Live. And what I'm going to be doing over the next several weeks to keep everyone in a great mindset is bringing on some incredible women, entrepreneurs and leaders, women in the 7 figures, 8 figures, even 9-figure ranges, to remind you what is possible. This is such an important conversation right now. It's where we all need to really anchor ourselves and be making decisions for this year around only from that place. That is the truth. That is where you need to stand solid and strong, and where we're going to focus in this series. All right. So during this time with us, I want you all to just, everything else on your mind, just put it aside for a minute, be with us here, because you're going to get some fantastic information. And I'm going to tell you a bit about Kara. I know you want to hear from her, but let me give a few highlights of her career. So you probably figured out already, because I'm waving this drink around, that this is Hint water. And I met Kara, I think it was 2012, when I was just pregnant with my twins. And we met in New York City as both part of the EY Winning Women program, fantastic program that mentors and grooms women entrepreneurial leaders. And that is originally how we met. Seems like eons ago. You could sit in a room with people and go out to dinner, and everything was beautiful and normal and fun. And Kara and I had, we just clicked instantly, and we had such a great connection. And then I learned so much more about her, which I want to tell you. So she's been named EY Entrepreneur of the Year in Northern California, one of InStyle. This was the one I coveted the most. I'm like, oh wait, InStyle's got her on a list? Like, this is, wow. InStyle's 2019 Badass 50, one of Fast Company's most creative people in business, and one of Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs. She was previously at AOL. You may say a bit about that today, where she led the growth of its shopping and e-commerce business to over $1 billion. And today she's got the Kara Network. It's a mentoring platform to help other entrepreneurs. And my favorite is her podcast, Unstoppable, where she interviews disruptors across various industries. And Kara, I have to end though just with how excited I am to have you join us in Miami in March as a special guest advisor at our annual spring trust meeting. So I can't wait to see you in person.
So excited to be there and get out, definitely. And by the way, we changed the name of our podcast a few months ago. It's now called The Kara Goldin Show. So there were a few other Unstoppables that were out there. So we decided to make that shift. So
because there's no other Kara Goldin.
No, it's something I've learned along the way. So so it's the same great content. And I started out really mostly with founders and interviewing founders and learning, but then along the way, I've picked up some CEOs as well that I think are great, and many of them making decisions about their careers based on what they ultimately want to get up and do every day. And so I've really been thrilled with what we've been doing over the last year, and it's every Monday and Wednesday, weekly.
Oh wow, you're twice a week.
Yeah. That's it's crazy. So it's been a lot, but it's been a lot of fun. And we've also got some authors in there. So being one, I'm sensitive to getting the word out about just great strategies and great stories along the way. And but I promise everybody that I'm talking to is definitely they've passed the test of you're going to learn something from every single one of these books.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to, do you mind if I start with the book actually? Usually I'd want
Yeah.
your story, but I want to jump into something. So, I don't think I asked you this on the podcast because I've had you on my podcast as well, Glambition Radio, which is a little longer. We can go a little deeper. We're getting more to the points today. So the book, you know, was it a conscious decision to have this come out in this current time, where everything's just really crazy and a little unsettling and people are a little nervous to make business decisions?
Yeah, so I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, but I also call myself an accidental author because it was about 4 years ago. I was, I'm doing a ton of traveling with growing my business and also just doing public speaking events. And I started journaling. And I primarily started journaling to help myself really think about some of the different stories that I could use as an examples when I was explaining sort of hard things that I had been through. And that's when, about a year and a half ago, I made a decision, I guess almost 2 years ago. I started thinking, gosh, there's so many people who don't end up at these events that I'm going to, where I'm sharing these stories. Maybe I should just bind my notes together and give them out to people. And that's when a friend who was an author said, this is a book. And the hardest thing about this was that my journal, which ultimately became my book, was 600 pages. And so narrowing my journal down to 225 pages, I remember saying to my publisher, well, can it just be 600 pages? And they were like, no, it's got to go down to, 200 and change. And so I've probably got another book in there at this point with all of these different stories. But again, I led with the idea of helping people, which is really the same concept that I had when I was starting my company Hint, and different, and that it helped people to get healthier. But I felt like this story, by just hearing my stories, hopefully it will allow other people to recognize that if I can do it, they can do it too. The book was always on the schedule to publish in October. It actually hit Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller, which I was a little surprised about, given that it was right before the election, and there was a lot going on. But Allie, I think that the interesting thing about, it's called Undaunted: Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. It's very rare that women are writing books when they are an existing CEO. And I think that is really what I'm hearing back from people who are reading it and enjoying it too, is that you're sharing the stories, not just of here's how I did it, here's how I built it, but also here are some of the things that didn't go well. And here are things that I wasn't happy about at the time, but what I did do was set myself up so that I could go back if I hit certain goals and renegotiate things. So things along the way that are really, again, not what people are typically hearing. And it's interesting. I'm also, what I find fascinating is I'm not only hearing from entrepreneurs, but I'm also hearing from existing CEOs, who I heard from one a couple of days ago, who reached out to me and has been in a category that has been really challenged by 2020. And she said, the interesting thing was that I found in your book was that it's going to be okay. Right. And that I've got to sit there and look at these challenging times as, what can I do differently next time to set myself up for success? And that is, for me, something that I didn't expect out of this book. I didn't expect that I would be hearing from people that this book was giving them as much hope, right? Initially, it was, let's just go share the story. There was concern that apparently people don't typically, according to many publishers, buy books that are about female founders. Did you know that? I mean, it's an interesting.
You know what's interesting when excuse me everybody, I just had to put a
Yeah,
cough drop in to
yeah.
keep because I took a swig of your water and then went down the wrong way. It's good for a good cause. It's interesting because when you look at women's leadership books,
Mhm.
typically, who are from business authors, they are typically coaxed into the personal development category. It's really interesting that I've
Mhm.
seen. And so they're encouraged, at least I've had a lot of this experience in some of my clients, in that even the women with great business success are still kind of encouraged to go into that. Do you know what I'm talking about? That personal
Yeah.
development versus being seen as a true business leader, saying, no, I want to put me next to the guys. Like, what is the problem here? Why are you trying to rebrand this or repackage this? And I think it's so great. It's just the cover. It's like, this is a business leader cover. I was so glad that it didn't look like all the other books. Do you know what I
Thank
mean?
you. Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
and it really is, again, I didn't intend when I was writing this book, even when I ultimately made the decision to publish a book, I didn't intend on being one of the only female CEOs that's out there, with the book, but I also didn't
Mhm.
intend to be one of the few that's actually sharing that it's not always easy. And I've always felt that, I mean, as you know, I have 4 kids, and they're now, older. They're all in the Gen Z category and a lot of fun, 3 in college and 1 in high school. But when I started
Yeah.
out, that wasn't the case. I mean, they were little, and there were things that I wanted to go to the mommy and me classes. I wanted to do things because I felt like I was never going to get an opportunity to do that. And what I didn't realize until later on was that I was making time to do the things that I wanted to do. Maybe along the way, I had sort of doubts whether or not, I could grow this business without having any business industry or any industry experience, but also, was I doing the right thing by being a working parent and having, these young kids? I definitely had time slotted out, whether it was for the weekends or I always, took my kids to school and made sure that I was at their activities after school. But it wasn't until later, and this is a story that I share in the book, that when my son Keenan was 12 years old, he said to me, "Mom, I just realized that women aren't CEOs." And I thought, oh gosh, do I have to go down this path with him? Great. Terrific. Come on, just share with me. And he said, "Why is that?" And he went on to, share that he just didn't really understand because I had always been a CEO to him. And so
Yeah.
just by doing not only what is maybe perceived as not common or, whatever you want to call it, I was setting a role model, not just for him, but how he would ultimately interact with other females, other leaders, whether he was managing
Yeah.
them, whether he was being managed by them. And so that is really when I, about 6 years ago, kind of woke up and said, wait a minute, like, I'm actually really doing the right thing. But certainly when they were little, there were moments. And I know, you're a mom as well. And sometimes, you have your days and you just sort of have to hang it up for the day and say, okay, let's save
Yeah.
this for tomorrow. But I think it's an important
Yeah.
thing that people need to talk about, and particularly women. It's okay to actually want to be a parent as well, right? It's
I
not.
love that you talk about it too, because there's some speakers, you probably know this, and leaders who are women, and they're like, "Do not ask me the life balance question on stage."
Yeah,
I've heard this before. They're like, "Do not go there," and I understand. I understand that maybe why they feel that way. They're like, because they don't ask the guys that question, and I don't want to be asked that question. And I had the opportunity to talk with a speaker who felt that way, and I said, I just want to let you know. I said, we're still asking the question because we need help.
yeah.
We're still asking the question because we want to know how you do it, and maybe you could share it in a different way, not on stage, but we really want to know. Like we're like how much we balance and hold, and hearing you build your company, you know, with the kids. And so, and you have this wonderful family. You're all very tight. You're not like totally dysfunctional. And because I see it, you know, and I just want to give you cred for that, and want you all to know that Kara is a model of what is possible to build a 9-figure company and still have this tight, amazing, really close family. Like you guys, your family is a lot, is the center of everything you do still.
Well, and I'm most proud because the four of them are so tight and they're very different personalities, but they all still really love each other. But I think that it's it is really, really clear that having each other so much of the time too is just really welcome. I
Yeah.
said a couple of times on social media, just listening to them when I was in the other room, they're cracking up in the kitchen and just laughing about stuff. It makes, my heart solid, right? Just knowing that they have that relationship with each other. But
Yeah.
again, I think it starts with knowing that their parents are doing what they want to be doing, and that they also perceive me as doing things, not just leading a company, but also I'm working on a huge initiative in Washington around clean water. And so they'll every once in a while jump in on that conversation and ask me what's going on with that. And my son's going off to college this week and said, "Hey, can I, if we get this to Congress before the end of this or before the summer, is there any way that I can fly to Washington and actually watch and see
That is
exactly how?"
awesome.
Right? And so I think
Yeah.
that's an unusual situation. And the one thing that I'll say just about the work-life balance that I've said over and over again is sometimes I'm not balanced, right? And that's okay. But I think that that's an important thing to really own, right? And
Hmm.
say when things are just really, really crazy. This
Yeah.
idea that are you are a founder or you're leading in some way, and then all of a sudden you've got lots of stuff going on at home, your kids are both sick, something's gone on, you've got a pandemic. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and I just want people to really be able to speak to that when they feel that they need to. And I think that that's
Yeah.
a really important thing. And I think the more authentic you are, the more you own those challenging times, the better leader ultimately you will become. And that's what I've really seen in managing during the pandemic. Because of course I've never managed during a pandemic, but now I have, and you see lots of interesting things. And I think that, like I said, if your team sees you jumping in and sort of owning, hey, it's really challenging, and here's how I'm thinking about things, I think that
Yeah.
is what they'll respond to best.
Yeah, I love that. Now I want to get into more about the product and a bit about your story. But before I do, I just want to give a quick link here. For those of you who are interested in joining Kara and I, we are going to be in Miami at our annual spring meeting for the trust. The link is at the top here. If you are in the 7-figure plus category, okay, we work with women at a certain leadership level who lead certain types of businesses at a certain, it's just a different conversation. The link up here is at the top. It's jointhetrust.org/private invitation. This is for a special call I'm hosting on Wednesday, February 3rd. The link will be below the video here as well. The call is going to be at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. And on that call, what I'm going to be doing is walking you a bit more through what the trust is, why I created it, everything we have planned coming up. And the unique factor I think we really have going, there's some great women's networks out there. Kara and I are both part of many networks. I don't think you should be part of just one. But it's a bit of a different breed, more modern conversation. And man, these women, there's just something that's hard for me to even explain coming up, that we've had this connection with each other, and we're really here just for such impact. And it's funny because we come because of the business, but it's also about who we're becoming
Mm-hmm.
in the process. And so it's jointhetrust.org/private invitation. If you'd like to come join the call with me privately, I could tell you more and how you can come meet us in Miami, and Carol will be joining us. So I'll let you,
Very excited.
yeah, I'm so excited, especially just to spend some time away from my family. Sorry, but speaking of how much we love our family, I'm like, oh, a plane trip? I haven't had that in like a year. Yeah, let's do it. So let's get to let's talk a bit about the product. Okay, let's talk about how did this evolve? Where did this come from? And then what's next?
Yeah, so I never thought that I was an entrepreneur, although looking back, there were so many signs and that I would ultimately become one. But I started my career in journalism and soon in the magazine industry, and then went into broadcast with CNN, and then uh, ended up getting my first taste of not only a startup, but also tech when I moved to Silicon Valley, to San Francisco, actually, and worked in Silicon Valley for a little spin out of Apple that was a Steve Jobs idea that was doing CD-ROM shopping. And we were acquired by America Online, where I was leading the e-commerce and shopping initiative there. And that's when I decided, after 7 years, I was on the plane all the time. And the United pilots knew my name. And I thought, it is time to go back. I already had a couple of kids. I was pregnant with my third. And I thought, it's time to go back to San Francisco, get something that I'm not doing so much traveling. And that was it. I assumed that I was going to go and do something else in tech. And I felt that at some point, when you become really good at something, this is a really interesting point. When you become good at something, the world tries to define that that's who you are, right? And I kept kind of, I was uncomfortable with just this concept that that's all I was going to do, that I was just going to sit
Mm.
in tech my entire life. I loved my role at AOL. I enjoyed tech. I loved the e-commerce and shopping side of things, but I really thought there's a lot of other things that I know how to do. Just because I'm good at something, it doesn't mean that I can't challenge myself to go and do something else. And so that's when I was taking some time. I, again, enjoying being a mom and having these little kids, but was also trying to get rid of some health issues that I had. I had developed terrible adult acne that I didn't even have as a teenager. My energy levels had just sunk. I always had lots of energy, but for some reason, I was tired all of the time, and I had gained a bunch of weight. I mean, I consistently gained weight with every single pregnancy, but I could not lose the weight. And I went on all these diets. I was counting calories, and nothing seemed to be working. And so finally, I thought, okay, I'm really going to pay attention to labels. And I mostly was focused on the food. And then one day I saw my daily diet soda, Diet Coke in particular, staring at me in the face. And I thought, gosh, there's all these ingredients in this drink that I don't really understand. Why am I only focused on the food? I didn't really think it was going to make a difference because it was called diet. And I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but I just decided just to test it. And in 2.5 weeks, I lost over 20 pounds. My
Just from the drink change.
Just from the drink change. And I also
Holy
realized
cow.
some really interesting things, including that I was eating like little candies along the way. Like, I would be sucking on things that now I know so much more how the brain reacts to even a tiny bit of sugar. When you are really addicted to these
Mm.
diet sweeteners, you get hungry. And your brain doesn't know the difference, unfortunately, between these diet sweeteners and regular sugar, especially when you're having it in lots and lots, right? As I was doing. So that's when, and you're ultimately, I mean, there's a lot of studies that have come out about this, you're producing insulin. And so I think now that I was on the border, although I was never diagnosed, I think I was on the border of being what's called pre-type 2 diabetes. And that, again, 16 years ago, that was just starting to become a discussion. About 2% of the population had this thing called type 2 diabetes. Today, 45% has type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes. And these are people who are mostly drinking diet, eating low fat, thinking that they're doing the right thing, but their body isn't reacting properly to it.
Yeah.
And so while I was going through this process, as you know, I grew up in Arizona. I should have been drinking a lot more water, but I wasn't. And so I asked myself, why wasn't I drinking water? And I thought, because it's boring. That's why I'm not drinking water. That's why I want something with more flavor in it. And so I started slicing up fruit and throwing it in the water. And I was like living that way for the next year. I didn't want to go back to drinking my diet soda. And that's when I started looking in the supermarket for this product. I still didn't think that I was going to go and launch a company around it.
Yeah.
But that's when I saw this hole in the market. And I thought, just while I'm trying to figure out that perfect tech job, let me try and figure out, how do I get a product on the shelf? And that was the moment when I really saw my energy levels spike, that I was like, every day I was waking up, I was so engaged, even if I was hearing no, or as one of the stories in the book shares, how I ultimately got information on what I was doing. Because again, I had never been in the beverage industry. I had no idea what I was doing, but just by literally camping out in Whole Foods, I would tap people on the shoulder, Allie, that sort of looked official, like they were sorting out bottles on the shelf, and I would say, hey, I have this idea for a drink. Do you think I mean, how would do you know any people that would bottle it? Or do you know anybody who would distribute it? I had no idea what I was doing. But what I found was, just by not having information, just by not actually being an expert, I was actually able to get a ton of information. That is not to say that I didn't have my doubts, right? And that sometimes people wouldn't speak to me, or basically discounted me for, not having experience. But just by having tenacity and curiosity, I was able to just keep asking, keep asking, keep asking. And again, it was what I noticed while I was in the space too, Allie, was that part of the thing that was going on for me when I left AOL was that, because I knew what I was doing, I and really had risen during a hockey stick time in that industry in particular, that things had kind of naturally leveled out, and I couldn't figure out why I was bored. But what I figured out was that being educated, being, challenged every single day was really kind of the biggest problem for me, which I was now seeing was definitely changing by getting into an industry that I knew nothing about.
Yeah. And now, do you feel like that's just part of being a leader, that you're challenged every day and new things will come up? Like over this past year, for example, were there any big decisions you had to make about the business, or changes, or?
Yeah.
Well, people didn't stop drinking water, did they? Like, were you pretty unaffected this year?
Well, we
Or did business go up?
so unaffected. I don't know if I would use that word, because it was insane this year. But what we were, I learned a new term this year, which is essential product. And so water is something that, when you're an essential product, you have to make sure that you're actually on the shelves in stores. It's sort of like part of the category, and part of your commitment to the US government is that you're not going to shut down your factories. You're going to do what you can to make sure
It must
that
have been a nice surprise. You're like, damn right, we're essential.
we are essential,
Awesome.
right?
Yeah.
But with that, I think that it's also kind of knowing that, again, I had never managed during a pandemic. There were a lot of, challenges along the way. While everybody was told to shelter in place, we were sharing with our team, actually, we're an essential product, and here's your mask and gloves and hand sanitizers, and, we're working. And that can be, leading with that is challenging. And the biggest thing that I think I did, just because I wasn't sure, and it's kind of really the same situation and kind of approach that I took when I started the company, was that you just get in it. You roll up your sleeves and you try and figure the stuff out. And I think this
Mhm.
goes back to the point that I was making earlier around learning. The biggest challenge, I think, for people as we not only grow older, but also grow in the ranks, is that we think that we should know everything, right? The number of years that we've been in something, right? You get to be a manager and then a director and a VP and then a CEO. And then all of a sudden, you're in this place where you're spending more time teaching versus actually learning. And so the problem with that is that I believe that if you aren't learning, then you generally cannot be happy. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn about this last week as well, and got an amazing response from it, because I think that the challenge for so many people is that they think, okay, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm bored. You know, I'm not, I- I'm not sort of what I was. Maybe it's just because I don't like the people around here. You start to find things, right, that you just don't like about something, versus actually accepting the fact that maybe you're not learning in this company,
Mm.
in this role. And so what I saw in going and starting a beverage company, as crazy as it sounded to me and to other people, was that it was really forcing me to go back in and learn. And I really think that that's something that people should really look at in their own lives. When maybe you're not yourself, maybe you're just not really as happy as you think you should be. I always go back and ask now, are you learning? And
Yeah.
so often people have said to me too, maybe I should go take on some board positions. And I don't necessarily think that's the answer either, because if it's in an industry where you know it like the back of your hand, you're going to be in a
Yeah.
position where you're teaching versus actually going and doing something that you just don't
I
know.
love this. Yeah, I haven't heard you talk about that before. And it's that's so important. And I know too, when I start feeling a little flat, or stagnant, it means that I'm not out there learning and doing
Yeah.
something different. And that, so this applies for professionals and executives as well. If you're listening, just everything. It's so important. And often we want to stay in that lane, but I don't know if it's conscious even. We just kind of stay in that category, right? Because we think, well, this is the path. But
Well, and I think
but
society places us there too, right? And I
yeah,
think that even if we're capable, which I think so many of us are, it just doesn't mean that you shouldn't be learning. And that is where you get, I think there's actually a cycle there too, where maybe you realize that you're just not fulfilled. I mean, there's terminology that I see all the time, and it starts there. And then all of a sudden you start getting angry and you start picking, whether it's your work life, you hate your boss, you don't like your colleagues, you're not really excited to be there. And then you start picking at your family, you start, picking where you live, picking at, I should say. And so I think that I always go back to whatever you're doing every single day. If you're working or wherever you're spending the most number of your hours, are you learning? And it's a simple thing, but it's one that I always encourage other C-suite executives and people that I've met along the
yeah,
way, and they're like, that is so interesting, because I never
yeah,
really thought about that. And how do you make the leap? You go figure out what interests you. And that is probably the toughest thing to figure out? What do you really enjoy doing? What are you curious about? Right? I mean, I wouldn't have said, "Oh, I really enjoy the beverage industry." I mean, that was not really what I was thinking about, but what I became so interested in was, why was I losing this weight? Why was I able to get healthy by giving up something that seemed like a commitment to me around health, diet soda? And so if you find something that you're just so curious about, and you can actually come in with an idea and change something, and I mean, that is something that your brain just keeps getting energized by. And
Yeah.
it's
I
so
love the word curiosity. Curiosity is really important too, and it's really interesting because sometimes I'll get a client in for the day, and this is where we shut the doors. And these are my favorite days. We got the whiteboard, phones are off, and we just zone in. And there's always something typically percolating underneath, but they haven't let themselves explore it. It could be a new business idea or even a whole new company. They're like, oh, I have everything I need to go to this, but I don't know. I'm like, well, let's talk about that. This is about possibility today, and then we'll work it. What we do is the morning's all about possibility and State of the Union, and then we all work it out after lunch. Like, it's two parts. But that possibility, seeing the curiosity, that's what sparks everything again. And that'll spark what they need to do for their current business, as well as whatever new thing they need to do. It just lays itself out. So I'd love, in Miami, if you could talk to us more about that, because I think it's almost a lost art. We could get so much information now that many of us just aren't genuinely curious and stepping into that next level of maybe what we could possibly create. And Kara, your team gave me a link, and I'm going to read it out, and you could tell us more about the link and what they get there. But it's drinkhint.com/we lead live. So Kara's team know you came from me. drinkhint.com/we lead live.
Yeah, and you can go in there to order the book and see a little bit more about the company and Hint too. And you can also get the book on Amazon as well. But it's really hopefully you'll get a chance to read the book and also come back and share with me on social exactly how this book helped you, hopefully, to know that you can do it as well. And I'm on at Kara Goldin.
I do like the Larry King. I don't have a big table though. I'm just doing.
I love it.
Pop in here. Okay.
Yeah, and it's Kara Goldin with an I.
Perfect. There we go. And by the way, you can order Hint, which I love, just ship direct subscription. And that's another decision that you talk about in the book that was really interesting in changing, when everyone says, oh, you have to distribute this way, you took control back because, you could better serve your customers in a different way. And so there's all these stories in the book that you'll all enjoy. I hope some of you will consider joining us in Miami. I'm going to give that link one more time in the interest of time. So
I'm so excited, Allie, to come and share more about the stories.
Yeah. It's jointhetrust.org/private invitation. And what the trust is a new circle, a new network, a new community of women leaders who are at the 7 figures and above. I'm going to be leading this call personally on Wednesday, February 3rd, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Please note, we do need you to qualify to join us for this call. This really is for people who are truly interested in the trust and joining us. But Kara, I want to thank you for your referrals. I know you've sent some colleagues to come learn more. Tell me, just to wrap up, a bit about the networks. What has your network done for you, and why do you think it's important for women to elevate their connections?
I think the most important thing that I've seen in really successful networks is maybe you will go asking questions on, how do I solve my problem? What should I do? But at the end of the day, the best networks are the ones that just help you solve your own problems, and you help you think for yourself, right? And that's something I share with people all the time. Yes, I wanted to know. I would go in Whole Foods and ask anyone I could, hey, do you have the name of a distributor, or how did you get a distributor? And then they would go on and share their story about how something happened. And it would spark these ideas in my head. And you mentioned our direct to consumer business. I mean, that is something that only recently are the big soda companies now saying, oh gosh, maybe we should actually sell direct. We've been doing it for 7 years. And, and it's just, and again, just because somebody says it can't happen, rely
Yeah.
on yourself. Don't ever think that whatever you've done up until now was a total waste of time. Instead, learn from not only your mistakes, but your experiences, take from your success, and try and figure out how that actually plays into your journey going forward. And I'm such a huge
Mm,
believer, having run the e-commerce and shopping partnerships at AOL, I knew what was possible. But I didn't think when I walked into the beverage industry that was ultimately how we were going to sell product. But it ended
yeah.
up that when we started doing it first on Amazon, and then we went ahead and launched it on our own platform at drinkhint.com, that is exactly what the consumer wanted. And they wanted the choice. They wanted all 26 flavors. They wanted to know more about what we were doing at Hint, including launching sunscreen and hand sanitizers and some of the other deodorant and fun things that we're doing. So again, I think that anything's possible. The more creative you are, the better. And really doing things differently, not having the experience where you've been trained to think a certain way, no crazy idea is wrong, right? You've got to
Mm,
go and figure out, why am I coming up with these ideas? What is it that I am supposed to be doing with these ideas, and lead with that? And I know, Allie, you're such a huge believer in this too, that it's really, it's the ability to not only come up with these ideas, but also figuring out what your journey is and why it's you.
yeah.
And I'm a huge believer in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I love something you just said, just kind of triggered something that being around people who think differently, that I think could change people's destinies more than anything. So you just made an interesting distinction. You said, some places you get the information you need, but other places they kind of elevate who you're becoming and how you operate. And that's how I love to think of the trust. So thanks for helping me to
And
distinguish
so
that.
many people think too, it even, friends of mine will think, oh, I'm not going to go to that conference because they aren't all in my industry. And I gravitate towards
Oh
conferences,
my
right?
gosh, totally. Yeah,
Where
yeah.
you're going to
That's where I
think
learn
and you're going
everything.
to learn and you're really going to pay attention, because we all have a tendency when we walk into circles where we know the industries, we've got it all down, right? We sort of
Mhm.
we go the easy route. We go the route where we're not learning, but you go into an environment where people have all done different things in different industries, right? And
Yeah,
have different experiences, and they're just like you, they're trying to do something new too. That's where you really find the commonality. And
yeah,
but
yeah.
also the differences are really where you learn and where you get the most excited. I love your events. I think they're so fun, and we've always done it in Scottsdale, so it'll be fun to do it in Miami for sure.
Miami. Ding, 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 ding. We're gonna go. We're gonna have fun. We need to have fun. Oh my God, we need to have fun. We need to have some fun.
But
So,
safe
Kara,
fun,
thank you for
right?
joining us. Yeah. Okay. Um, we need to gather. We're so excited to gather. We're so excited to see each other in person, and of course, and we'll have a contingency plan. We always feel people ask, well, what if you can't have it? Well, then we'll have a contingency plan. But we set intentions that we are going to be together in March. Everyone watching, so have a look at that link again. It's jointhethrust.org/private invitation, and I'll give you Kara's link one more time to check out her book and everything Hint, and the book
Yay.
Undaunted, which was drinkhint.com/we lead live. And Kara, we went way over, but this is so good. I didn't want to bring it
So
in.
fun.
So, but I think we need to bring it in. So thank you so much for joining us. And just thank you for being who you are and all the inspiration you provide everyone that that it has the chance to be around you. And we're excited to have you with us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.